In the heart of the Kenyan highlands, two lion cubs took their first breaths just minutes apart, but fate had already decided they would spend the next 8 years believing the other was dead, until a wildlife photographer captured an image that would change everything and prove that some bonds transcend time, distance, and even death itself. The morning mist clung to the acacia trees like whispered secrets as Kiara, the lioness, gave birth beneath the ancient baobab that had sheltered her pride for generations. The first cub emerged with a distinctive golden mane already showing promise of magnificence, his amber eyes reflecting the dawn light with an intensity that seemed almost human. The second followed closely, smaller but bearing an identical mark, a crescent-shaped scar above his left eye that looked as if the moon itself had kissed him at birth. Tembozi and Jengo, names that would mean strength and builder in the local Swahili tongue, though they would grow up never knowing these names belonged to them. In those precious first hours, they nestled side by side, their tiny paws intertwined, two halves of the same soul breathing in perfect synchronization. The pride gathered around them, the elder females humming low, approving sounds that vibrated through the red earth, welcoming these new princes to their ancient kingdom. The savannah stretched endlessly before them, painted in shades of gold and amber that seemed to mirror the cubs, future, limitless, beautiful, and wild. Kiara's pride was strong, 23 members led by the magnificent Bahati, whose roar could be heard across 3 territories. These lands had known peace for many seasons, abundant with zebra herds and gazelle families that provided sustenance without the desperate hunts that plagued weaker prides. In this sanctuary of red soil and endless sky, Tembozi showed early signs of leadership, always the first to explore beyond the safety of his mother's shadow, while Jengo displayed a gentler wisdom, often found grooming the pride's elders or playing peacefully with the youngest cubs. They moved through their world like twin shadows, never more than a few feet apart, sharing meals, sharing warmth during cold highland nights, and sharing that wordless communication that exists only between siblings who have known each other since before birth. The other lionesses often commented on their unusual bond, how they seemed to breathe as one entity, how Tembozi would refuse food until Jengo had eaten, how Jengo would position himself between Tembozi and any perceived danger, despite being the smaller of the two. The routine of pride life flowed like a gentle river through the cubs' early months. Each dawn brought the same comforting rituals that had governed their ancestors for countless generations. Kiara would wake first, stretching her powerful limbs before nuzzling her sons awake with tender precision. Tembozi always emerged from sleep with immediate alertness, scanning their surroundings with those piercing amber eyes, while Jengo would yawn dramatically and burrow deeper into his mother's warm fur for just a few more moments of comfort. Their days followed the ancient rhythm of the savannah. Morning meant learning, watching the adults demonstrate hunting stances, practicing their own awkward pounces on fallen leaves and patient beetles. Tembozi favored the direct approach, charging at his targets with fearless enthusiasm that often sent him tumbling past his intended prey. Jengo preferred stealth, belly low to the ground, moving with calculated patience until the perfect moment to strike. The pride's territory encompassed nearly 40 square miles of diverse landscape, from the rocky outcroppings where they loved to climb and play king of the mountain, to the watering holes where they learned to drink without falling in, much to their mother's amusement. The brothers had claimed a particular fallen log as their favorite wrestling arena, spending hours each afternoon engaged in mock battles that would prepare them for the real challenges ahead. Midday brought rest under the sprawling shade of their beloved baobab tree. The adult lions would sprawl in various positions of magnificent laziness, while the cubs were expected to remain close but quiet. During these peaceful hours, Tembozi and Jengo would curl together, Tembozi's already impressive paws draped over Jengo's back, both of them breathing in perfect synchronization as they dozed. Evening hunts were learning experiences, though the cubs were too young to participate directly. They would follow at a safe distance with Kiara and the other mothers, watching Bahati and the experienced hunters coordinate their efforts with silent precision. The brothers learned to read the wind, to recognize the subtle body language that indicated different types of prey, and to understand the complex social dynamics that made their pride successful. These were golden days of innocence, when their biggest concerns involved who got to sleep closest to mother and whether the morning would bring new insects to chase. The invasion came without warning on a Tuesday morning when the cubs were barely 4 months old. Tembozi was teaching Jengo how to climb the lower branches of their favorite acacia when the ground began to tremble beneath their paws. At first, they thought it was a herd of wildebeest passing through their territory, but the vibrations carried a different rhythm, mechanical, alien, and growing stronger by the second. Kiara's warning roar split the morning air like thunder, a sound the cubs had never heard before, filled with terror and desperate urgency. The peaceful savanna exploded into chaos as a convoy of military vehicles burst through the tree line, their engines roaring louder than any lion's call. Behind them came the helicopters, their rotors churning the air into violent winds that sent dust devils spinning across the grassland. The pride scattered in every direction, following escape routes that had been planned for traditional dangers, rival prides, poachers, or natural disasters, but never for this mechanized nightmare. Bahati's magnificent roar boomed across the chaos as he tried to rally his family, but the deafening noise of engines and rotors swallowed his voice. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work, so if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. Civil war had erupted across the region, and this particular stretch of savanna had become strategically valuable overnight. Military forces were establishing a supply route directly through the pride's ancestral territory, turning their peaceful kingdom into a battlefield within hours. The convoy wasn't hunting the lions. They were simply an obstacle to be cleared from land that soldiers now claimed as their own. In the pandemonium, Kiara found herself running with only one cub. Jengo pressed against her flank as they raced toward the rocky outcropping that offered the best chance of escape. Behind them, gunfire cracked through the air, warning shots meant to scatter the pride permanently. Kiara's heart pounded as she realized Tembozi was not beside them, but turning back meant certain death for the cub she could save. The helicopters swept low, their downdraft flattening the golden grass and creating a wall of dust and debris. Through the chaos, she caught one last glimpse of Tembozi's small form being carried away in the jaws of an adult lioness from their pride, but in opposite direction, toward the distant mountains where survival meant abandoning everything they had ever known. The brothers, lives shattered in a single moment, torn apart by forces beyond their understanding. In the weeks that followed, both cubs faced the harsh reality that their world had been permanently shattered. Jengo, clinging to Kiara's side in their temporary refuge among the rocky caves 15 miles from their former territory, would spend entire days staring toward the horizon where his brother had disappeared. He refused to play, barely ate, and made soft calling sounds that broke his mother's heart, the particular chirping call that had always summoned Tembozi to his side. Kiara watched her surviving son waste away with grief, understanding that she faced an impossible choice. Stay in these barren rocks, where Jengo might die from heartbreak, or venture into unknown territory to find food and safety, permanently abandoning any chance that Tembozi might find them. Every maternal instinct screamed at her to search for her missing cub, but the practical reality of survival demanded she focus on keeping Jengo alive. Meanwhile, 60 miles away in the shadow of Mount Kalima, Tembozi had been carried to safety by Sakai, an elderly lioness who had lost her own cubs years earlier. The old female had acted on pure instinct during the chaos, grabbing the nearest cub and running, only realizing later that she had separated a family. Tembozi's grief manifested differently than his brother's. He became aggressive, attacking anything that moved, as if he could fight his way back to the family he had lost. Sakai's small group of 3 adult lions had welcomed the cub out of necessity rather than joy. Resources were scarce in their mountain territory, and an extra mouth to feed represented a significant burden. They had no way of knowing about Jengo's existence, and Tembozi's desperate attempts to communicate his loss fell on ears that interpreted his behavior as trauma from the military attack, rather than mourning for a brother. The cruel irony was that both cubs had survived, but neither group had any way of knowing this truth. Kiara spent sleepless nights wondering if Tembozi was alive somewhere, while Sakai assumed the rest of the original pride had been killed in the conflict. The distance between them might as well have been an ocean, and with each passing day, the chances of reunion grew smaller. Both mothers began the heartbreaking process of helping their traumatized cubs accept that their old lives were gone forever, never knowing that 59 miles away another family was struggling with identical grief. 8 years passed like a slow-burning drought across the East African landscape. Jengo had grown into a magnificent lion, his mane flowing like liquid gold in the highland winds, though those who knew him well could see the perpetual sadness that lingered in his amber eyes. He had become the reluctant leader of a small pride of 7 lions, taking on responsibilities he never wanted after Bahati's eldest son had challenged him and lost. His strength was undeniable, but his heart remained hollow, as if a piece of his soul had been carved away and never replaced. Kiara had passed 3 years earlier, her final words a whispered apology for not being able to find his brother. Jengo had grieved alone on the rocky outcropping where they had first taken refuge, roaring his pain into the empty sky until his voice was raw. The other lions in his pride respected his leadership but could never truly understand the melancholy that drove him to wander their territory's borders each dawn, searching for something he could never name. The mountains had shaped Tembozi into a different kind of lion entirely. Smaller than his brother but more compact and muscular, his coat had darkened to a deep amber that helped him blend into the volcanic rocks of his harsh homeland. Sakai's teachings had made him a solitary hunter, skilled at taking down prey that mountain lions had learned to catch, agile klipspringers, and sure-footed mountain goats that required patience and precision rather than the coordinated pack hunting of the plains. He had never taken a mate, despite several lionesses showing interest over the years. Something deep in his chest whispered that he was incomplete, that somewhere in the world was a missing piece of himself that he needed to find before he could truly live. The other mountain lions thought him odd. This powerful male who would disappear for weeks at a time, traveling impossibly long distances, as if searching for something that existed only in his dreams. Both brothers had developed the same unusual habit. They would climb to the highest points in their territories during the full moon and roar into the darkness, their voices carrying across miles of wilderness. Neither understood why they did this, only that it felt necessary, as if they were calling to someone who might be listening somewhere beyond the horizon. The divide between them had become an ocean of time and distance, yet something primal in their souls refused to accept that their bond was truly broken. Dr. Amara Ochieng had spent 12 years documenting East African wildlife, but the photograph she captured on that scorching February morning would change everything she thought she knew about animal behavior. She was part of a conservation team mapping lion populations across 3 countries, using advanced tracking technology and genetic sampling to understand how climate change and human encroachment were affecting big cat territories. The assignment had taken her to the remote Nyanza Valley, a pristine stretch of wilderness that served as a corridor between the highland territories and the mountain regions. Her team had been tracking a lone male lion, whose GPS collar had been sending unusual data, massive territorial movements that defied normal lion behavior patterns. No male traveled such distances without purpose, yet this lion seemed to be wandering aimlessly across hundreds of miles. Through her telephoto lens, Amara watched the magnificent creature emerge from the morning mist. His golden mane caught the early sunlight, and there was something hauntingly familiar about his profile. She had photographed thousands of lions over the years, but this one carried himself with a distinctive melancholy that reminded her of another lion she had documented years earlier in the highland territory 60 miles south. As she focused her camera, capturing detailed shots of the male's facial features and distinctive markings, Amara noticed something that made her heart race. Above his left eye was a crescent-shaped scar, perfectly formed and unique. She had seen that exact marking before, documented in her files from a highland pride she had studied extensively. But that couldn't be possible. The highland male had a completely different territorial range and had never been recorded traveling this far from his established boundaries. Racing back to her mobile research station, Amara pulled up her digital archive, scrolling through thousands of photographs until she found what she was looking for. There, captured 18 months earlier, was another magnificent male lion with an identical crescent scar above his left eye. The facial bone structure was remarkably similar, the amber eye color precisely the same. Even the way both lions held their heads when alert showed striking similarities. But genetic analysis had shown these 2 lions existed in completely separate populations, with no recorded interaction between their territories. The mathematical probability of 2 unrelated lions bearing such identical markings was astronomically small, unless they weren't unrelated at all. Amara's discovery sent shockwaves through the international conservation community. Within 48 hours of her initial findings, she had assembled an unprecedented coalition of wildlife researchers, geneticists, and local tracking experts. The Kenya Wildlife Service immediately approved an emergency operation to locate both lions simultaneously, understanding that this could be the most significant animal behavior study in decades. The logistics were staggering. 2 separate teams equipped with tranquilizer equipment, GPS tracking devices, and mobile laboratories positioned themselves at opposite ends of a 100-mile corridor. Amara coordinated from a command center established in the valley between both territories, monitoring radio communications and satellite feeds as the teams prepared for what everyone hoped would be an historic reunion. Finding Jengo proved surprisingly easy. His predictable patrol routes and established territory made him trackable within 6 hours. The Highland team reported his location near the ancient baobab where he had been born, as if some magnetic force had drawn him back to his origins. The tranquilizer took effect smoothly, and within minutes they had collected genetic samples and fitted him with an advanced tracking collar equipped with cameras and audio recording capabilities. Tembozi presented a greater challenge. His mountain territory was vast and treacherous, filled with caves and rocky outcroppings that provided endless hiding places. The search stretched into its 3rd day before thermal imaging finally located him on a ledge 1,200 feet above sea level. The mountain team had to use climbing equipment and specialized darting guns to safely sedate him, a process that took nearly 8 hours of careful maneuvering. The genetic results came back faster than anyone expected, processed by a laboratory in Nairobi that had been standing by for the samples. Dr. Sarah Mwangi, the lead geneticist, called Amara at dawn with results that made her hands shake as she held the satellite phone. "Amara, they're not just related. They're identical twins. Born from the same litter, separated as cubs. The genetic markers are conclusive. These lions have been searching for each other for 8 years." The reunion site was chosen carefully, neutral territory in the Nyanza Valley, where neither lion would feel territorial pressure. Both males were transported while still sedated, positioned 50 yards apart in a clearing surrounded by acacia trees, with cameras documenting every moment of what promised to be either the most beautiful or most tragic wildlife encounter ever recorded. The sedatives wore off within minutes of each other, as if some invisible force synchronized their awakening. Jengo stirred first, his massive head lifting slowly as consciousness returned. His amber eyes blinked against the afternoon sunlight, filtering through the acacia canopy. And for a moment he seemed disoriented by the unfamiliar territory. Then his nostrils flared, catching a scent that stopped his heart mid-beat. Across the clearing, Tembozi's eyes snapped open with startling alertness. His darker, more compact frame tensed as he registered the foreign environment. But like his brother, his attention was immediately captured by something far more important than location. The wind carried a scent he had been unconsciously searching for his entire adult life, a fragrance buried so deep in his memory that he had convinced himself it was merely a dream. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work, so if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. Both lions rose to their feet simultaneously, their movements mirror images of each other. Despite 8 years of separation, they stood frozen for an eternal moment, 2 magnificent males staring across 50 yards of golden grass, their minds struggling to process what their hearts already knew. The crescent scars above their left eyes caught the sunlight identically, marking them as clearly as signatures written in their DNA. Jengo took the first step forward, then stopped. His entire body was trembling, not with fear, but with a recognition so profound it seemed to shake the ground beneath his paws. Tembozi answered with a single step of his own, then another, his usual mountain caution abandoned, as something primal overrode every survival instinct he had developed. The distance between them closed gradually, each brother moving with increasing certainty until they were just 10 feet apart. Then Tembozi made a sound that shattered the silence. The exact chirping call he had made as a cub, the sound that had always meant, "Come to me," in their private language. Jengo's response was immediate and identical, the same chirping call emerging from his throat as if no time had passed at all. They crashed together with a force that would have been violent between strangers, but between brothers was pure joy. Their massive bodies collided, manes intertwining as they rubbed against each other with desperate affection. Both lions were making sounds that defied classification, part purr, part growl, part sob, vocalizations that seemed to pour 8 years of grief and longing into a single moment of reunion. The research team watched in stunned silence as the reunion unfolded beyond anything their scientific training had prepared them to witness. Through their cameras and recording equipment, they documented behaviors that challenged every established understanding of lion social dynamics. Jengo and Tembozi remained physically connected for over 3 hours, grooming each other with an intensity that spoke of desperate need to confirm the other was real. Their individual scents had changed dramatically over 8 years of separation, altered by different diets, territories, and life experiences. Yet somehow, beneath these surface changes, both brothers recognized the fundamental essence that marked them as family. They explored each other's faces with their tongues, paying particular attention to the identical crescent scars that had marked them since birth, as if these markings were proof of their shared origin. Dr. Amara noticed something remarkable in the audio recordings. Both lions were producing low-frequency vocalizations that human ears could barely detect. These subsonic communications, typically used by lions to coordinate over long distances, seemed to be serving as an emotional language between the brothers. The sounds were complex, layered with what could only be described as conversation, each brother responding to the other's calls with increasing sophistication. As evening approached, the brothers began displaying synchronized behaviors that defied explanation. They would lift their heads at exactly the same moment to scan the horizon, their amber eyes moving in identical patterns. When Tembozi settled into a resting position, Jengo immediately mirrored the pose, their bodies forming perfect symmetry, despite having no visual contact during the 8 years of separation. The most extraordinary moment came as darkness fell. Both lions rose simultaneously and moved to the highest point in the clearing, a small rocky outcropping barely large enough for both their massive frames. There, silhouetted against the rising moon, they lifted their voices together in a roar that seemed to shake the very foundations of the earth. The sound was unlike anything the research team had ever recorded, harmonizing in ways that suggested musical composition rather than random animal vocalization. Local Maasai guides, hardened men who had lived alongside lions their entire lives, were visibly moved by the display. Elder San Kale, the team's chief tracker, spoke in whispered Swahili to his companions, tears streaming down his weathered cheeks. Ndugu, he repeated softly, the word for brothers, as if witnessing something sacred that transcended the boundaries between human and animal understanding. The brothers chose to remain together, defying every scientific prediction about territorial male lions. Dr. Amara's continued monitoring revealed they had created something unprecedented, a shared territory spanning both their former domains, requiring them to travel vast distances but ensuring they never separated again. Their hunting success rate doubled, their combined strength allowing them to take down prey neither could handle alone. 6 months later, both lions had attracted mates, forming the first recorded dual leadership pride in modern wildlife research. Their cubs, born within weeks of each other, displayed the same unusual bonding behaviors their fathers had shown, suggesting that deep emotional connection might be more genetically programmed than previously understood. Jengo and Tembozi's story became a cornerstone case study in animal cognition and emotional intelligence, published in journals worldwide. Their reunion footage has been viewed millions of times, touching hearts across cultures and continents. Conservation efforts in their region received unprecedented funding, protecting not just their family but countless other species sharing their habitat. Most remarkably, the brothers still perform their synchronized moonlight roars, now joined by their pride members in a chorus that echoes across the East African wilderness. Local communities consider it a blessing to hear their voices, believing the sound brings good fortune and family unity. Their story proves that love transcends species, that family bonds can survive any separation, and that sometimes the most powerful force in nature isn't survival of the fittest. It's the unbreakable connection between souls meant to be together. What incredible animal story has moved you the most? Share it in the comments below. Your story might inspire our next video. If this reunion touched your heart, smash that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss these amazing tales of animal resilience and love. Together we can share stories that remind us what truly matters in this world: